up, everybody? Dave Savage coming live out of WeWork Portland with my co-pilot, wingman, Todd Bookspan. What's up, brother?
You know, it is fun to be back on video with you after seeing you on and off for the last few days.
It was great. So guys, we do this call every Friday, 9 o'clock Pacific. Either myself or Todd are here probably. I think we average one of us on this call 90% of the time, maybe 95. I think we're on a run where we've both been on this call more times than not lately, but every Friday, guys, you have a place to come and ask questions and learn about best practices, great success stories, get inspired about the mortgage business. Todd and I aligned that the big topic today is going to be our takeaways from Sales Mastery. For those of you who are there, hopefully this will make that experience even better and help you take what you learned and put it into action. And for those of you that were not there, hopefully you'll get some ideas and you'll get a little bit of the magic that happened at that event. So Todd and I synced up, and one of the things we want to start doing on these Friday masterminds is for the first 5 minutes, we just want to have Todd, when he's on the call, be a win by noon accountability leader and just talk about key metrics. So Todd, I'll let you frame that. I'll let you have that, that win by noon weekly huddle up. And I'll let you take the mic, bro. You still here, Todd? Wow, we lost Todd right there. Hey, Marcy, could you confirm that you guys can still hear me? Anybody? Marcy, you're on mute if you are here. All right. So okay, so people can hear me. Kimberly, thank you for jumping in. We'll have some other people. So why don't we start with sales mastery takeaways, and when Todd comes back in, we'll do that win by noon piece that I pre-framed at the opening. Also, remember to everybody, this is a community call. So if you have questions, you have takeaways, if you're watching this in Zoom, put your chat below. If you're watching this in Facebook Live, put your comments below, and we will definitely bring you into the conversation. So first of all, Sales Mastery 2019 was a huge success. Todd Duncan, as always, is super thoughtful about who he puts on stage. The venue, just the whole experience of the event is a transformational place. Different people have a different experience. There are some people that go to every single event, take notes, go to bed early, and really invest in the experience. And there are some people that go to some sessions, and there are some people that are just masterminding. But the one takeaway to me that is just definitive is that this is a place where there's a lot of incredibly successful mortgage professionals that are going there to mastermind and get better. It was just a rock star cast of pros. People, when I say pros, I'm talking people closing over 100 loans a year, people that are closing 50 and 60 loans, and they're just career loan officers. And then anybody, that's closing less than that, they're really being super intentional about getting to that next level. So it continues to be a venue of professionalism. Couple takeaways is, one, I interviewed Wally Elderberry at the last day of the event. And I was asking Wally, what was your big takeaway? What did you get the most value from? And he started with his team. He's like, I brought my team, and the reactions on their face, one, how inspired they were, two, how much value they were getting. It was, one, a reminder that as a leader, you've got to really invest in your team. You've got to, not only lead them, but you need to put them into the content experience that you're having as a leader, so that their why is your why, and you guys are growing together. So I could go on that, and I have other takeaways. I brought my daughter, Sid Savage, with me. That was a personal highlight for me, just to see her, get value from the content, and then to have her engage with our community. So I'll keep sharing takeaways, but Todd, you're back. Why don't we do that win by noon leadership piece that we talked about before you did your magic act on me and disappeared?
I disappeared, so I don't know what goodness I missed, but something's funky with my laptop, so I jumped on my phone. But you know, it was fun because we were talking about, right, how do we bring in some accountability to this call each week, right? I mean, here we are, we've got a loyal group of folks who jump on week in and week out. And one of the things that was a little distraction for me during Sales Mastery was I actually, after Dave and I hosted our happy hour on Monday, I actually flew to Reno, and I've been working with a small outfit in Reno, a little over 30 loan officers for about a year. And I went in and we did kind of a recap, right? I went and I retrained their brand new loan officers who hadn't been through my training last year. And then we did a 2-hour summit with all of their sales members and sales leadership, and then followed it up with kind of a 90-minute debrief from their leaders on, you know, what went well, what could use improvement, and just general feedback on this whole idea of accountability. And so Dave kind of gave me a little bit of a nudge and said, gosh, you know, you kind of need to have this check-in with the group. And so I would love you guys to maybe to speak in on what metrics you'd like to report out, whether you're a Win by Noon user or not, right? We know there's certain things in this community that are really important to all of us, right? Close loans, certainly, because that's family served and that's when you guys all get paid. Obviously, TCAs is one of the things that we track in Win by Noon, and that's really important. We know annual mortgage reviews are tracked in there. That's really important. But one of the things that those of you who are part of the community know, we actually start on the lead indicator side, right? We know that closed loans are a lag indicator, right? A TCA, any annual mortgage review, that's a lead indicator, right? A quality conversation with a realtor partner or a client or potential client is a lead indicator. Dialing the phone, right? Reaching out to people is a lead indicator. Some of you know that with my team, we do it every day, right? I know a lot of other leaders in this community, like Frank Blakely does this with his realtors. He used to do it weekly. I met up with him at Sales Mastery. He said they're doing it monthly now, where once a month they're getting together and sharing their metrics as a group. And so we would love to get some people starting to throw down in here, either in Facebook, I guess in Facebook, not in the Zoom group. Let's go in Facebook, sort of what metrics you guys are tracking and what metrics you would like to see us in this group on a weekly basis sort of jump in and report, whether that's going to be leading client calls, whether that's going to be conversations, folks you're talking to. Absolutely, we're going to push TCAs into that conversation. Annual mortgage reviews, right? You want to have leads in there, applications, pre-quals. What do you guys want that to look like? Because what I would tell you is when I talked to the credit union, it was pretty cool. What they did was first we just went around and had a general conversation, but then everyone was there and they were prepped up, right? So they all had their Win by Noons ready in their hands. And then they drew names. Actually, they made me do it, so I was the villain. Drew names out of a hat, and everyone had to get up and report what their sales plan was for the year, how they were doing on their numbers year to date, and then what was the activity they were committed to in order to make sure that between now and the end of the year, they didn't lose momentum and that they headed into 2020 with some success. And it was kind of interesting because, you know, a lot of things that we take for granted in this community as kind of being the basics, right? Annual mortgage reviews. That was their number one thing for growth this year, was the fact that I taught them annual mortgage reviews last December, and they made a commitment as an organization. So to you leaders out there, do you have a commitment to that as an organization, right? But they made a commitment to do annual mortgage reviews. And you know what? Almost everyone who got up said that was actually one of their biggest areas for growth as they prepped doing annual mortgage reviews before rates had dropped. And then as rates dropped, obviously it just took off. And then the second thing, as odd as it sounds, right? One of the things that I talk about in Win by Noon is a lot of what you guys do and other coaches talk about as well, is kind of what's your ideal week. And really, what are the things that you're going to set as a standard, right? Dave and I did a call with Andrew Paul where we talked about standards and setting standards. And so one of the standards that they set as an organization as well was that they were going to do update calls every Tuesday to their realtor partners and their clients on all processes, all transactions that were in process. And so the number two thing that I heard from them say over and over, something that most of you know in this community because you guys do it, I think, is that how many listing agents they were able to pick off by actually being consistent with those calls. Because oftentimes what I find is when I really push loan officers, and maybe you've seen this too, Dave, but when I push loan officers, I say, are you making update calls? They say, oh yeah, absolutely. When I say, great, when are you doing it? They're like, oh, well, I do it, when something happens, like the appraisal comes back or it comes out of underwriting. And I say, okay, or they say, oh, I do it a certain day a week, whether, you know, it's Monday or Friday or Tuesday, whatever that is. And I say, great, how consistently are you doing it? And they're like, ooh, well, you know, I do it most of the time versus, you know, I know some people who are at Sales Mastery told me, hey, Todd, I actually made sure this morning on the break, I made all my update calls. That's a standard they set, right? That's a commitment they made. So that's kind of my thought, Dave. What besides TCAs do you think we should throw in this group? Certainly closed loans. People love to brag about their successes.
Yeah, so while Todd was talking, I put a few questions in. I asked you guys, what's your number one most important metric? And so Bliss Sawyer just jumped in and said phone calls. You can either identify what your number one metric is, or you can just reply to that question I put in comments. So we kind of have a thread going. So I'll leave it to you guys. I think, just daily phone time with prospects is the metric that when I interview top producers that matters most. Josh Metal from 9 to 11 or longer, he gets that 2 hours of phone time. I talk to some people that measure the number of phone calls. I talk to some people that measure the phone time. I'll leave it to you what's most important to you, but that daily prospecting, to me clearly is number one. I am Mr. Mortgage Coach, so I think TCA is number two, but I honestly believe, that quality, whatever your best borrower experience is, where you're delivering that, whatever your perfect loan process is, your perfect sales experience is, measuring that, whether you got the loan or not, again, it is like there's leads, there is a, high trust mortgage coach conversation. And if you don't use high trust or you don't use mortgage coach, if you're proud of it and it's the best that you could do, it is what it is. But I personally think that's number two. Those are just my opinions. But guys, the thing that I want to do with this, let's just say the first 5 minutes on Friday. Now, if Todd or I are not on the call, we may not start this way. It's just some intention. I want everybody to think, how many loans did I close this week? And if it's worth celebrating, celebrate. Think about that. How many loans did you open this week? Clearly, those are money-making activities, although they're not what I would call key performance indicators. They're more things that happen because of things that you did. So, document them, think about them, either celebrate them or get better. How many leads did you generate this week? If you don't know the answer to that, I can just tell you that the most successful loan officers in America, the most successful realtors in America, they track. They know how many leads they generated. If you're a Win by Noon user, there is a place for you to document, got a lead, what the source of the lead was. But you should clearly know what those things are at. So those are some of my thoughts. Todd, anything you want to add on to that? Anything you want to call out to the community before we just focus on mastery takeaways?
No, I love that Bliss jumped in there, right? Because she's a Win by Noon certified instructor even, because I do believe it starts all with the calls, right? I mean, I find that people, you kind of nailed it, right? You have organizations like Josh's, and then a lot of the big real estate teams that we work with Win by Noon are all about the prospecting time as opposed to the number of dials made. Most of you individuals, right, you're picking up your phone out of your pocket and you're making calls on your phone. So you should be tracking how many actually people do I have to outbound dial in order to get a closed transaction, and figure out what your numbers are, because, it's a little skewed, right? Coming out of a refi boom, that gets a little bit skewed because the numbers, you look a lot better than you were the rest of the year. And I would tell you, of all the people I talked to at Sales Mastery, one of the biggest things I heard was the fear in Q4 last year, the fear they had in Q1 of 2019, and then the jubilation they've had ever since with low rates. And, I would say, Dave, one of the things that was interesting for me, and you can tell me if you heard otherwise, I found people were in one of two categories and not much in between at Sales Mastery. We had the people who are still crushing it, right? Like, the last 4 months have been record months and their Novembers look really good. And then I talked to other people who were exactly the opposite. They weren't opposite on the success. They crushed it typically the last 3 of the last 4 months, right? Some of them are not having a great October, but then their Novembers are kind of bleak and they're worried about it. And so those were the people that I challenged to double down on understanding their numbers as the market is shifting. And then I took the people who were celebrating the success and I said, awesome, let's make sure that we're not looking at those lead indicators, that they're slowing down. And a few of them came back after we had the conversation and reported to me that, hey, they went back and looked at their CRMs, or they went back and looked at their Win by Noons and saw that actually the number of leads are down so far in October. So again, I didn't mean intentionally put fear into place, but I did intentionally want to kind of shake them a little bit and say, guys, you got to make sure that you don't slow down. You want to keep this momentum going. And so I think that getting clear on your numbers right now, don't wait till December and look at your 2020 numbers. I'd be setting my 2020 goals now, and I would start focusing on figuring out what are those activities as this last quarter goes through to crush it. So I'm kind of excited about the little nudge you gave me in this first 5 minutes as we start going forward of talking about that, seeing how this community's doing, because you guys are the best of the best. So let's make it happen. Let's show the rest how it's done.
Yeah, good guys. So going forward, help hold Todd and I accountable. These Friday masterminds, let's just say 80% of the time, when Todd and I are on the call, we will start the call with just 5 minutes of, what were your metrics, win by noon style. If you are a win by noon member and you want to actually take a picture of your kind of like weekly scorecard or take a picture of something and post it, we won't hold that against you. We'll like it, we'll give it a like on Facebook. And hey, we don't care what you use. If you're tracking your results and you're documenting it, you want to take a picture and share it, we'll like that also. Because at the end of the day, Todd and I are mission driven. I want to change how families get into debt in America, go beyond the transactional triangle of rate, payment, and closing costs, and actually look at the cost over time with options, look at financial strategies like prepaying your mortgage. That's my mission. And Todd's mission is just make mortgage professionals more efficient, more effective. And really, Todd, when I look at Win by Noon, it's like you're going beyond the mortgage space. I mean, you're helping realtors, you're helping executives, you're helping anybody and everybody that wants to be a high achiever go faster, do more, and do it in a more intentional way. So guys, help us drive this mission every 5 minutes. On Friday, we will kick it off with some accountability around that. Todd, any last words before we rock it out?
Well, I would just say if you have questions on it, if you don't really know what Dave and I are talking about or where to start, just ping me, Todd at winbynoon.com. I'm happy to give you, kind of some insight of where to start. And I can point you towards some resources and some videos I've done on it. Because in the end, again, when I'm talking to the best of the best at Sales Mastery, they know their numbers. And you know what, regardless of where you are in your career, we all need a little bit of improvement in our numbers. And if I can help you guys in any way, I'm happy to do it. I don't feel like you have to be a Win by Noon user in order to share in the same mission of getting crystal clear on the activities I need to do today to get the results that I want at some later time, whether it's the end of this month, the end of the quarter, or the end of the year.
Hey, Todd, didn't your Facebook group, the Win by Noon Facebook group, you'll let anybody in it. I mean, you don't have to be a Win by Noon member to get access to that Facebook group. Is that right?
You don't have to. Ironically, you used to have to be, but I get a lot of people now who say, no, I'm not a member, but I'm part of the Mortgage Coach Productivity Mastermind community. So yeah, I'd love to get some more of you in there. You'll start seeing in the next couple of weeks, we'll start throwing a lot more content into there. That'll be exclusive preview looks in there. Some of the content that I'm going to be putting out, through my YouTube channel and the podcast that we're getting ready to launch. So, but we'll give a lot of sneak peeks and kind of some behind the scenes stuff inside that group. So I'd love to have you guys in there. It's just the Win by Noon user mastermind group. All
right, check it out. So let's do some sales mastery takeaways. I'll go first. And I mean, we could spend hours on this. I do ask anybody that's in this community, if you are at Sales Mastery, if you could just at a minimum do a shout out, say, I was there, what's up, Dave? And at a maximum, tell us what your favorite speaker, your favorite quote, your favorite takeaway, would be great to have your feedback. And if you're listening to the recording, I would still ask you, just take a minute and go, loved such and such. Here's my favorite quote, whatever. Give us a shout out. I'll close with some of my poignant favorite quotes, and I'll actually show you some pictures because I was in the audience, and anybody who sees me in an audience, I take a lot of pictures. If you sit next to me, I might actually be annoying because I take so many pictures. But my first takeaway was, because I was there with my daughter. She's 20 years old. She'd never been to an event like that. Hearing what Wally said and how his personal takeaway was seeing the members of his team, it was just the power of a in-person event. Intellectually we know things, we know what we should do, but there's just no substitute for emotional connection, whether that's emotional connection at a live event, hearing things, seeing things, feeling things. I mean, there were things that were said on stage that I literally had to hold tears back from. There were things on stage that just made me want to jump out of my seat. There were in-person meetings, whether they were meals, whether they were like sitting at chairs outside the room, connecting with people. Just a reminder that personal growth happens at the highest possible level, in person at events. It was just a big reminder. And then, like I said, having my 20-year-old daughter with me, there were times where I was in hearing something and she wasn't there. And I'm like, oh, man, why isn't she here with me? Because this is just so powerful and someone else is saying it. So that was something I know, the fact that I've been to 27 sales masteries, obviously I live that. I have been part of that event as a loan officer, as a branch manager, as an executive, and I've been there as a mortgage coach, entrepreneur. But just a reminder, so anybody that's not masterminding enough, and again, it could be as simple and cheap is reaching out to some people that you want to learn from in your local market and having coffee or lunch with. That could be the lowest cost way that you could go out there and get some emotional value. And then it can be as expensive and as big as going to a sales mastery or another industry event. And then the importance of doing it with your team, your people. Sid and I are going to work a lot more effectively. She's going to be a lot more in sync with the things that she's doing to help mortgage coach, because she was at that event with me. So Todd, that was my first takeaway and reminder, and I'll let you go next, and I've got some more to come.
Well, I loved it, and I would start with, because you sat in a lot more sessions than me, so don't steal my Tim Sanders thunder. I'll talk about that, but my personal journey there, I would say the first thing is I brought my brother-in-law, who some of you have heard me talk about a lot lately. He's been 4 months in the business, and so I had a different view, just like Dave saw it through Sid's eyes. I saw it through my brother-in-law's eyes, who sat in there, and he and I actually have some time scheduled on Monday, so he's going to have to download the event, and he's going to have to come back to me and tell me what his highlights were, what his top takeaways were from each speaker, and then what questions he has. And so those of you who have other people in your office who were there, whether you were there or not, I would encourage you to try to have that same kind of communication. But, for me, Dave, I just always, of course, love our happy hour kickoff. And it's always, the event is always amazing, but it's the time around the event where you've got this opportunity. So, for me, I kicked off when I got there with kind of a late afternoon lunch, early dinner, I don't know what you would call it, with Katie Pastor and Dan Trinidad. And so, to have that time with them and hear how excited Katie was to get up on stage and speak, hear how nervous she was to get up on stage, and then to hear, what they were looking to get out of the event was really cool. And then we transitioned from that straight into our happy hour, where I think that's such a fun event for me because, again, you hear that same thing from other people. Hey, here's how I'm doing this year. Hey, here's what I'm excited for at this event. Hey, here's what, who my most anticipated speaker is at the event, and sort of how they were all prepping for it. And so I would tell you that the best of the best, I thought, were prepped well for the event, meaning that they came in, they'd already reviewed who the speakers were, what the schedule was. They had that kind of highlighted. You mentioned Wally and his team, so that's when I was off camera for a minute, but I did see a lot of that. In fact, I saw him with his team when I was going to connect with you the other night. They were sitting around a table, having a conversation. I saw, like I know I think you interviewed Alex McFadden, and I saw, I sat down with him and his team yesterday morning, and I talked about what their takeaways were and what they had gotten. There's a big group of my friends from Alaska at First Rate. There was 10 of them, right? And I sat down with them and was able to be a fly on the wall and hear how their team was masterminding and what their takeaways were. So I just love that piece of it. The masterminding piece would be my first takeaway before I jump into any other specific.
Sorry, I had to mute that. So good stuff. For those of you that are chiming in on Facebook, thank you for participating. Tina, yeah, go Sid. By the way, Sid loved you, Tina. For anybody that did show up to our, Todd, what are we going to call that? We've called it a champagne toast, I think 2 times, and I don't think we're doing a champagne toast.
Yeah, we didn't do champagne. We did that the first one. The first one we bought champagne.
So this is our.
We're at a tequila bar now. It makes it a little harder to do a champagne toast.
I know.
So we're open for suggestions on a new name for next year.
Well, I had Jim McMahon was like, hey, where's your mixer? The Win by Noon Mortgage Coach mixer. And I had two different people call it a mixer. I personally like to call it like a mastermind, just because, it's a mastermind meetup.
Well, that's what I
and
said.
Todd
That's
and I
what
are
we're
into
doing.
it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's
So
a good kickoff. I think
Yeah,
it's become the unofficial kickoff of Sales Mastery the last 3 years.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. But I wanted to say, like, thank you for those of you that showed up. Thank you. It was a really cool gathering that I'm super proud to co-host that with my man Todd, Bookspan, and Win by Noon. If you were there and you dug it, let us know. We will be posting pictures tomorrow. We took a lot of cool pictures of that. We were just Sid and I were so busy meeting with people, creating content. We didn't have a lot of time to post it. But that does bring up my second takeaway, because one of the interviews that I did was with Alex McFadden. He's a top mortgage professional from Canada, and he BombBomb named him the Mortgage Influencer of the Year last year. So I mean, whether you use BombBomb or not, BombBomb is a badass video email platform. So if you want to create videos and then send them out, track it, use it, they're a leader at that. And there's a lot of other ways of doing it, but this guy was named for the mortgage space Influence of the Year. So obviously he's highly thought of. I have been personally following him for years, and I like the way the guy rolls. I like the way he builds brand. If you're in Canada, you might know him as the Mortgage Pug. If you're a consumer or a realtor, that's a brand that he builds. And so the guy does a good job of building brand. He does a good job of doing video. And I interviewed him. That will be posted later today in this group. And, I think we're going to just call it Becoming a Video Influencer with Alex McFadden. And it was an overview. But here's two takeaways that I had from Sales Mastery. There was a really good panel on video. There was a lot of talk on video. And then there were people where I was just kind of talking to them, and I didn't like say, hey, do you use Mortgage Coach video feature? But they were just telling me I need to start using video, and my takeaway on that is this has been something we've been talking about for 5+ years, and more people are doing it. But I think we are at this tipping point now where everybody knows it's a good idea. Everybody knows it's a competitive advantage. Most people know that it is technically easy to do, because now we even have, we talk a lot about doing text video. So literally as simple as just mobile phone, everybody's got one. Everybody knows how to text, hit the camera feature, record. So like all of the how to do it is like gone. It's never been easier. There's never been more ways of doing it. And now you're just left with, why am I not doing it? And my takeaway was, it's clarity, confidence. Some people aren't confident about it. And I also noticed, like, it's not just like how good looking you are by society norms. There are people that are like, oh my God, you are beautiful, man, woman. It's not a looks thing. You're just, by all society norms, you are a beautiful person. They don't like the way they sound. They don't like the way they're back. I mean, they're afraid. There are some people, like me. I've got a face for radio, redheaded dude, super white skin, freckles, not perfect by any imagination, but dude, I'm on video.
You're perfect in my eyes, Dave.
Yeah, thanks, brother. So it was just a takeaway that the industry has reached this tipping point, the mortgage industry, where everybody knows they should be doing it. Everybody gets it. Everybody knows how, but their confidence is getting in the way of just doing it. And then I guess my last part of the takeaway is I actually feel like we're getting ready to have this super surgence of the mortgage industry really leading what I would call referral-based local professionals. Whether you're realtors, whether you're financial planners, if you are a local professional that lives off of the referrals, I literally think the mortgage industry is leading the way. Like we are showing, what I call this captain of the wealth team, how to be a modern professional leveraging video and social. Like, I think we are going to lead the way. I don't know, maybe realtors are leading the way. I don't know, but I'm going to say that the mortgage industry is leading the way. And that was just something that I took notes on, I journaled on, I'm thinking about. It was a takeaway. Todd?
You know, I love that takeaway, and it's funny, and hopefully she won't be mad at me for sharing it, but Katie Pastor said she just actually posted her first video last week and said the feedback was amazing. And so here's someone who I think, you know, unconsciously, I mean, I follow her on Instagram and on Facebook. She does a great job of Instagram stories. She celebrates her helping, you know, serving families. You see what her heart is. And I never even realized that she's not doing video. And here she was saying, hey, I did this video. And here she is in this jumping point. And maybe that's part of it, because I know she just did Amplify with Renee Rodriguez in Texas last month. But, you know, the bottom line is that I think there's a lot of opportunity in video, like you said, Dave. And I think that the challenge is that people don't know you as well over the phone as they can just in a face-to-face video. If you guys remember, Josh Metal will say that after he gets off the phone with clients, he will call that client up afterwards and just do a quick video. Hey, Dave, thank you so much for the opportunity to serve you and your family. I cannot wait to get you and your daughter into that backyard for her to play with her new dog and swing on that swing set. Just know how stoked I am. I look forward to working with you. I'll talk to you soon. Click, and he's off. And so I agree with you. I think that loan officers are leading, you know, from the tip of the spear on that one. So let's go to Tim Sanders. So we said we're going to talk about takeaways. And so since I was interviewing people all day instead of sitting down there and watching like you were, I did jump down there for Tim because I've seen him speak. I was trying to count when you said you've been at Sales Mastery 27 times. I've been there at least 10. I spoke 3 times on stage, so it gave me some street cred with my brother-in-law, who's just like, yeah, Todd's just the guy who you know, kind of pounds on me to do more and tries to make me a better loan officer. But then he's like, oh, you really been on the stage there? So that was good. But you know, Tim said a couple things I think that really matter. You know, I think my big takeaway was sort of his closing note that empathy is the superpower. Like, we all know that that's the difference between you and the online lender. We all know that's the difference between email and you guys actually sending out video and talking to him on the phone. But there was a couple of key things that he said I think you can implement today. Number one is he showed a graph of a study that they did of people who talk 80% of the time on the conversation. So think about this. You get a client on the phone and you're throwing up all over him about how great you are as a loan officer, how great your company is, how great your team is, how great your rates are, how great your service is. And he said, if you're talking 80% of the time, you only convert 20 to 30% of the time, as opposed to the opposite, kind of like the black belt, to use Dave's term, is if you're actually talking only 25% of the time, you're actually closing 76% of the time. And so you've got to be asking better questions, because the only real difference between someone who talks that much and someone who talks that little is the questions that you ask. And so you've just got to get better at asking follow-up questions, because the reason that Josh Metal knows about the swing set in the backyard for his client's daughters, because he asks more questions. What are you most excited about in this home? What are you most concerned about in this home? Hey, tell me more about that. And just think about those questions that you can ask that are empathetic, you know, hopefully because you actually care, and how you can turn that into that connection with your client, because I think that that's really the key. And then one other last thing I'll throw out there.
Hey, real quick before you move off that, I just want to remind everybody who's watching this that I took a picture of that. So there is a picture showing up on the screen. Take a picture of it, and you can see they did it by word count. That, you know, the less words, the more the other person spoke, the higher the conversion. And we all know that, you know, when we get to talk a lot, we like the people that we're talking to more. When someone else is talking to us the most, that's not, you know, that's not what powers likability, and that's not what powers closing rate. Todd, let me know. You keep on going. I also put this up because you opened up around empathy as a superpower, and that was his closing, and it was pretty powerful.
Well, I mean, I love Tim Sanders, right? I mean, his book, Love is a Killer App, is one of my all-time, you know, favorite books. And when he talked about it at Sales Mastery in 2004, it probably is one of my all-time, if not all-time favorite, you know, presentation that I've sat through. But, you know, as he was saying that, I always remember a couple of things. I remember when a referral partner would tell me how smart their client thought I was, and I looked at that call and said, gosh, I didn't even say anything on that call, right? It's just I asked really good questions. You know, I did a radio show for 5 years, and ironically, I knew that the best shows were the shows where I didn't talk very much at all. If I had to talk a lot, that meant I did not do a good job of extracting what I wanted out of the guest, or frankly, I picked out the wrong guest, right? Was oftentimes, but always it comes back to asking better questions. And I just think it's a weakness on a lot of loan officers. And I think, Dave, what are the TCA questions someone should ask when they're talking to someone who's only rate focused, right? You always say, let's shift that focus to a 5-year focus. Would that be just, hey, what is the other lender's cost on the loan over 5 years? Or how would you tell someone to be a ninja asking a better question here's in this refi market to kind of poke holes in the other lender they're talking to who's just quoting a rate?
So make sure I heard the question right. So Dave, what if as a loan officer, what question, let's call it a black belt in mortgage question, should you ask so that you're better positioning yourself against low cost leader or just competition? Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking because I know what I would do off of a TCA, but I know you're the TCA guy. So what would those couple of questions be that you would encourage the community to be asking?
All right. Well, it's interesting that you asked me that. I might actually have a slide for that. So also, I'm going to answer that question. And then I'm going to also, that Josh Metal script that you had, I wanted to show that on my screen just because I happen to have a slide for that too. So here you go, guys. We're going to give you some questions. So my first answer to that question would be, how did you position yourself before? Like, did you position yourself as, hey, I'm a low-cost leader, I can close loans faster? Or did you position yourself as, hey, I'm going to help you build wealth with real estate faster by making smarter mortgage decisions? And I'm going to manage that. I'm going to coach you over time. So, like, did you position yourself in a disruptive way? So before you get into questions, just how did you position yourself earlier in the conversation? And then, well, there are a lot of great questions that you can ask. And I'm not going to say this is the number one. I'm just going to say this is one of those questions that really can help you position yourself from the low cost leader. And that is, how old are you going to be when your home's paid off? Most loan officers don't ask that. Most families may not even know off the top of their head. They'd be like, oh, I've never thought of that before. That might be their response, which if that is their response, you are crushing it. You got them to think about something they hadn't thought about. That's kind of important, but they'll give you an age they want to be. And then, you get them to think about the loan that you're getting them. If it's a purchase, well, we're getting this 30-year mortgage. Or if it's a refi, hey, you're 3 years into this 30-year mortgage. You get them to think about where do you want to be and where are you going to be. And here's the thing. It is not uncommon that there's a gap. There's a 5-year gap. There's a 10-year gap. And you know what? That's okay. But you have a conversation around that. And of course, that positions you as a mortgage advisor because, whether or not they're going to get a loan from you that fills that gap, or whether or not it's going to give you a chance to say, hey, what if you prepaid your mortgage by $100, get the 30-year with 0 points or the 30-year with 1 point, and then you paid it like this. It just puts you in a position to deliver a level of advice that it's what the best loan officers do. It's how you optimize the value that you're giving to a family, and it's how you optimize conversion. Todd, any thoughts?
No, I think that's great because that was sort of, one of the takeaways that my brother-in-law had was he said, gosh, I've got to up my game on understanding financials a little more. And I said, well, gosh, you don't want to go on and become a financial advisor. You don't need to be that smart, but you do need to think through, what is the overall impact of someone's mortgage on their wealth? And so he's done probably 50 TCAs so far in his time. So he's off to a pretty good start because, every client that he works with, he's required by me to create a TCA for it. And I've got him focusing on that 5-year cost of the loan because I know that other lenders aren't giving them that number. And so I like that question of how old are you going to be when it gets paid off. It was interesting too. A couple of his other big takeaways were, definitely around the client consultation, which I know that mortgage coach really builds into. And he's really a relational guy, and he's really focused on the face-to-face meeting. So, as people were talking about their face-to-face meetings, he liked that. Then he also had some takeaways, which is certainly one of the things that, that I learned from Bill Hart as my coach and from Todd Duncan as one of my mentors, was the whole idea of shutting it down and making sure that you've got family time as well. So again, going back to you hanging out with Sid, you got to do both of those. But my poor brother-in-law, he's in building mode. So he's in hard work mode. And so I don't know if you talked to anyone else that sort of had that same struggle, where his takeaway was, shoot, I got to be a better dad and a better husband, and I got to grow my business. And how do I balance all of that?
I'm not the advisor on life balance, because I go in and out of it. I mean, I love what I do. I'm a very passionate person. I mean, I think by most social norms would be categorized as a workaholic. Now, I really work hard to bring my business life into my family life, bringing my daughter, including my family in what we do for business. But I'm not gonna jump in with any advice on that one, other than I do feel strongly that balance is bullshit, and we go in and out of seasons of life. Sometimes we're out of balance in different ways, and I think it's okay. I personally, I'm just not going to buy into that. Oh, I am perfectly balanced. So there are some people that literally live like that, but I mean, I'm ADD, I'm dyslexic, I am who I am, and I'm going to go in and out of seasons of balance, and I'm okay with it. And for the most part, my family is. So, hey, Todd, before we, by the way, anything you want to add to that before I get into a couple tactical takeaways and some other questions?
I want to highlight what you said at the end. I think it's seasons of balance, right? I think that's what it is. And regardless of what that looks like for you, is just get buy-in from your spouse or your significant other on it. Because I think that's always, we hit these different seasons. I work with my wife, right? So we hit these different seasons where, she had a different perspective on it when we worked together. She's like, oh, now I kind of get it. But for, the previous 5 years of that, I think she was kind of questioning, oh my gosh, Todd, that's crazy, these hours and what you're doing and the interruptions of phone calls. But I think just encourage you to get buy-in from, your significant other, your spouse, your kids, because ultimately in the end, your kids are watching, right? I made a rule at one point that I wasn't going to get on the phone in the house and talk business. So I'd get in the car and I'd pick up the phone and talk business. And my daughter was maybe 7 or 8 at the time. And she said, hey, Dad, maybe when you get in the car, you shouldn't be on the phone too. And I was like, oh, like kind of a slap in the back of the head from the back seat, it felt like. But it was so true. And so I always found that was one of the things where, because I'm no expert on life balance either, but I'm an expert on, hey, how do you go from season to season, and how do you have the discussion to get there? Because, one of the nicest compliments I ever got from a coaching client was actually from his wife, who said, thank you, because I'd asked him what his wife's expectations were the week around when their baby was born. And he's like, what do you mean? It was just totally, didn't even think about the fact. And I can imagine that, she'd be there delivering and he'd be, taking a loan app. So, so that's my only thought on that really is, that how can we better discuss that? Because even with Win by Noon, I've got to have those discussions with my family now. Like, hey, the last couple of weeks have been a season of traveling for sales mastery and the thing I did up in Nevada. And, now I'm plugged back in at home. So I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, you are someone in our friendship and watching how you operate, just the little conversations you have where, oh, I'm going to check with Tara on this. Oh, I learned from you, man. You're a great leader and role model to me. Daniel Harkavy has been that also role model. But that's just not the place where I give a lot of advice, because I think I get a lot of help from people like Todd on that, reminding me to, stay in balance, check with my wife, integrate my family into business. Hey, anytime they want to come with me to a mortgage event, I'm game on. So a couple topics. We got 15 minutes left. If you have questions, bring them in. I have been working hard for about a month to really get this, what is a black belt in mortgage advice. And when I started this project, it was really, I don't want to call it self-serving for Mortgage Coach. It was like, but I just had a lot of people that like, what is a black belt with Mortgage Coach? And so it started with just me trying to figure out a training program to take someone from a rate quoting transactional loan officer into a black belt on Mortgage Coach. And then I kind of broadened it to, on mortgage advice. And I really think where I'm at now, I've done dozens of interviews. I've given a few keynotes on this. I had Ryan Grant as my guest this Tuesday live from Sales Mastery on what it means to be a black belt. And I think where I'm at right now, it's just being a black belt as a mortgage professional. You know, there are white belts and there are black belts. So one, I wanted to create some awareness around this. If you haven't watched the interview, I think it's a fantastic interview. Ryan and I did some prep on it. I thought we had a really great conversation in person at Mastery. And I think we went through a lot of really powerful concepts that if you do want to play at the highest level and you want to be a black belt as a mortgage professional, here's a playbook and here's a conversation. Now, he introduced and he gave it as a giveaway to everyone, something he calls his 12 disruptive questions. And so one, I have pushed that. It's a file in the Mortgage Coach Facebook group now. So if you go into the Mortgage Coach Facebook group, now here I am maneuvering, and you go into our file section, we've got tons of great value and feedback in there. It's in there. You can check it out. Also, we uploaded that and we put it into SlideShare, and I put a link to that. So if you want to share that outside of our Facebook group to some of your team members, Ryan Grant was so kind to give us, you know, these 12 disruptive questions that he uses and that he trains his teams to use. So I wanted to create some awareness around that. I do want to really net out, you know, what are the 5 best, call it, being a black belt in mortgage questions to ask. So you'll see some posts on that in the coming days and weeks. And then I do think that's kind of like the missing piece to this whole slide deck that I have. And we went through it, you know, where it goes from, hey, what's a white belt? You know, I talked about, hey, here's a white belt as a loan officer. We were just delivering rate, payment, cash to close, you know, fee worksheet, that's a white belt. You know, an orange belt, you know, you're showing cost over time with options and you're showing strategies. And I walked you through it. I'm not going to spend a lot of detail on it right now, but in the call, you know, what's a brown belt? And then we landed on defining a black belt. But I need to work on these questions. If you have questions about this, let me know. I'm also, today, I've had lots of requests for this, but I'm going to make the slides available at the end of the day today, and they'll be in this thread down below. And this will be something that we're talking about at Mortgage Coach, but that was something, you know, I would love to know what you think are the most important black belt and, you know, mortgage professional questions to ask, and then check this out. Todd, anything you want to ask or add to that?
You know, it's funny because I'm writing down my originally I wrote down as a leadership question, but now I think it's actually an LO question. It goes back to where we started the call saying we're going to talk about metrics. I don't think it's a question that you ask somebody else to be a black belt, but I think it's what the question you ask yourself to be a black belt is, how many calls do I have to make, or how much prospecting time do I need in order to get a closed transaction? Because again, I think most loan officers they're busy, so they know they're doing a lot of activity, but they don't really specifically know how much of any specific activity is required to get a closed transaction. And so I think there maybe needs to be something in there, Dave, around the black belt activity is what's the one metric you're going to measure up front, what's that one activity in order to figure out what your results look like. So I don't know if that's too far off of your black belt thing or not, but I think that's critical.
Dude, that's so sweet, and that really is going to make me have to think of another thing. You know, the questions you ask yourself. I posted a post probably a month or two ago in the Mortgage Coach community. You know, how many people have read the 4 agreements? And I was blown away. I mean, that's literally in 2019. That's got to be one of the posts that I made that has the most comments and the most likes, you know, and they range from, oh my God, I've read that book 5 times and it's the most important book I've ever read. You know, it was just like, it just lit up. And I have Sid Savage, that's, you know, she's working with me. That's one of her homework assignments right now is reading that book. But I re-listened to it for like the 3rd time, the audiobook. And it's funny because, the first core agreement is, be impeccable with your word. And it talks about what you say matters, but it talks about what you say to yourself. Like, and I was just, it's funny you brought that up, Todd, because I was just thinking recently, not within Mortgage Coach Black Belt, but like the conversations we have in our head are actually the most important questions and the most important words of all. So dude, you and I need to come up with, what are those black belt questions that black belts in the mortgage business are asking themselves? And I know you've read that book. I saw you looking for it, right? You've
I was looking
probably
for
read
it.
that a few times.
I gotta reread it. I'm like, okay, I gotta find it on the bookshelf. Someone was asking about my book list, so I'll have to start. I'll maybe put that together because I have. It sounds really dumb, but it's prioritized, right? Like my favorite books are these ones right here in the middle, and then I've got it like by author on the other side. So I kind of have a method to my madness. And then there's a small stack over here that I pulled out that I had my nephew here who's freshman now in law school, and I had him doing some help me with some research on some of my books over the summer. So yeah, I'm all. But I think that is so true, right? It's how do you talk to yourself? What's that agreement? Because I do think that the people who are, again, it goes back to the standards. And one of the standards is treat yourself with love and respect first. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Because how can you treat others with love and respect if you're not living it, if you're not feeling it? And I can't remember who it was that asked for your book list. I'll give Todd a push to document some of that. And I would just tell you guys, make that a book. If you have not read it, read it. If you did read it again. It's a powerful book. It's not about the mortgage business, but it is about being a happy, confident, productive human being that builds and sustains great relationships. So check it out. Cool book. So Todd, we got like 8 minutes left. Have you scanned to see if there's any questions from the community or anything else we should close out on?
Well, I love it. Ann Carter said the best way to accomplish the work-life balance is to stick to your time blocking, i.e. using Win by Noon. You can work hard for 60 hours, build your business, and still have family time. So, I always think I think that's great, right? Steve Hogard, who's just awesome. And now I'm realizing he and I were supposed to connect there and we didn't. So I'm feeling like a loser, but he said, be impeccable with your word. Yes. The most important agreement. He said, great, Dave, that you pointed it out. And so, I love that. And so someone's asking me, the book is called The Four Agreements. Who wrote that? I don't remember, Dave.
I can't pronounce the guy's name, but I'll pull it up here in a minute. And again, I just, Steve, nice way to shout that out. But I think one of the things, at least I lost it the first time I read it, was, impeccable with your words with others, but being impeccable with your words with yourself, like self-talk. One of the most valuable personal development experiences I ever had 20 plus years ago is I went to a Tony Robbins event and I really nerded out for probably a year or two on neurolinguistics, which are basically the conversations we have in our mind and the questions we ask ourselves. So Steve, love that you shined the light on that, but I just want to re-shine it, guys. The questions you ask yourself matter most. The conversations you have inside your own head really guide how you show up in this world. So I'm going to close out with one last takeaway from Sales Mastery. And Todd Duncan, he spent the whole closing 30 minutes, which I sat in the second row because I couldn't get in the first row with my daughter Sid. And I'm not going to try to repeat what Todd said because it was so emotional, it was so powerful. But it just came down to, attitude is everything. And how we show up in this world. And that is the one constant that the people that are most successful in the mortgage business, heck, the people that are most successful in life have the best attitudes. And they're just powered by that. They radiate. And there were just people that was, like Sid pointed out, like as she would meet people, she loved everybody. So there was no one, literally we did not meet one person that she didn't love, that wasn't a super cool conversation. But there were like some people, like Katie Pastor, where, we got home last night and she was, telling my wife over dinner highlights, Sydney Ertman's name came up. Rosemary David's name came up. Katie Pastor's name came up. There were just some people that came up, and it just gave me that takeaway that, like mortgage coach is important, call and grinding it out's important, but just how we show up and the energy that we project in conversations matters most. Boom. Now I'm not the expert at, like, if you're not there, how to get there. I'll leave that to Todd Duncan, to Todd Bookspan, but just something to think about, and we all have to have our own personal journey. But, sharing takeaways from Sales Mastery, that was something that I journal on, I documented. I'll be thinking about personally. I'll be thinking about, for the people that I lead, how to grow, how we show up in a very attractive way. So Todd, I'll let you close it out, man. You got like 4 minutes.
I don't know how I follow up on that one. I do think attitude is everything. I totally agree. And so, think about what Dave just said. He said 20 years ago, he went to the Tony Robbins event and sent him down this path. And so whether you're at Sales Mastery or not, I think you've got a opportunity to make a decision of what you do with your time going forward and how you can learn from this. And so I tend to think that the biggest regret that loan officers have when I talk to them is the busyness and not being intentional with their time. And so all I would say is pick whatever that one subject was from today that you thought was great, and then act on it. So if it's to go over to the file section and get Ryan's questions that he shared with the group, do that, right? If it's to watch the video that Dave did with Ryan on Tuesday, do that, right? If it's to read the 4 agreements, right? Buy it, hop on Amazon, get it, or run to your local bookstore if you have one. Download the Audible, whatever that looks like to you, and just figure out how to get that slight attitude shift if you feel like you need it. That's still, Dave, the thing I love about this community. I feel like people come here and ask questions, and I don't see a lot of doom and gloom here. I'm in a couple of other loan officer communities where people get in there and they complain all the time. And I love it that our community is super positive in that they're looking for ways to overcome issues versus complain about issues. But I really feel like coming out of an event like Sales Mastery, whether you were there or not, you can learn from it, right? You can learn from the people who are there and what they posted. You can watch the videos like where Dave recorded Katie Pastor and put it on Facebook Live, and you can see, you can be there for
Katie.
Well, and I think that's the key, right? We all know the people we look up into the industry, right? You and I've mentioned a bunch of them on this, on this call, and that is, that's the gift of this community, right? So, I just would say, as we go here is, how can Dave and I challenge you? And I would challenge you where we started the call. I would challenge you to start recording the activities that you're doing, win by noon user or not, right? There's plenty of videos where I talk through what we record and win by noon. But I would just start talking with who am I dialing, how many people, and who am I talking to or meeting with, and try to figure out what that mystery is, right? Pick one thing, just one that you're going to commit to getting done between now and next Friday, whether it's a video in here, a book to read, whatever that is. Don't pick one video and one book, just pick one thing. And then, jump in the community. Dave said he's got some questions he's going to post in here, and I would love to see all of you participate in there. The more activity we can get in here, the better. And Dave mentioned the Win by Noon User Mastermind community. Anyone who wants to jump over there too and be part of that conversation, would love to have you there as well.
Love it, man. So it's been a great call. Steve, thanks for all the comments and the positive feedback in here. He said, love this live session. Best start to Friday besides surfing at sunrise. Right on, brother. to even be in the same category as surfing at sunrise, we're pumped. I want to close out with one last thought, because this is something that I also came just as a personal takeaway to do better at. I'm going to use my daughter just because I spent so much time with her and we kind of work side by side. And I'll throw her a little under the bus, but she didn't really know better. Is that, in her mobile phone, she had a lot of alerts coming up. So like we were creating content, and I got to like work side by side and see that like, Snapchat alerts were coming up, and I'm ADD, she's ADD, but the world is ADD. And then I would just push everybody. The most successful people are the most focused and the most present. And I know personally, I am gonna, this weekend go through all the alerts that pop up. I'm pretty strategic about it. I'm thoughtful about what alerts hit my my phone. I'm thoughtful what alerts hit my iPhone, but I know that I need to weed the garden, and I need to reduce some of the things that are coming up and distracting me from what matters most in my life. So that's one thing I'm going to do. And I talked to Sid. That was the only coaching I gave her throughout the whole day. And it was really at the end of the event, I'm like, hey, honey, you know, if you want to be your best, you need to, you know, learn to manage these things. And she's like, you're totally right. And it's really a decision. Like, if you decide not to do this, that's a decision to be distracted and just keep doing what you're doing. And just know that if you let these like little things just pop up all day, like, hey, when you're off work and you're not trying to get stuff done, hey, that's fun. But when you're trying to get stuff done, you got to weed the garden and keep the alert. So guys, go. I push everybody this weekend. Let's reduce some of the alerts and some of the noise in our life. Todd, you the man, bro. Appreciate you.
I love that, man. Bringing it back to insane productivity, where we started this whole group. Thanks everyone who hung out for this call and listened this far. Appreciate you, Dave. Appreciate this community, and super excited to see you all next week.
Take care, everybody. Have an awesome day.